waiting tables in a hip part of town. Place is fucking busy all the time. My section is half of this big outdoor patio overlooking a residential street. In the weeds, so I barely notice when this young Asian girl walks through the patio gates over towards me. I'm carrying a tray full of drink, but she grabs my arm and kinda tugs on it. Nearly drop the entire tray. I look at her like, what the fuck are you doing, bitch? But I notice she looks fucking freaked out. She says something like I need help, but with a thick accent. She's young, maybe mid-teens? Hard to tell with Asians. In my best waiter voice I say, I'll be right with you, and turn to drop off my drinks when I see these very well-dressed Asian dudes stroll over, smiling. They apologize and tell me their sister isn't supposed to leave the house and imply that she's retarded. Alarm bells go off in my head. But customers everywhere are flagging me down. And I've still gotta drop off this tray packed with mimosas for a group of botoxed old white ladies. Nobody seems to notice or give a shit about these men dragging away this teenaged Asian girl. I follow after them, tray in hand. Ask the girl if she's in trouble, but she doesn't respond, just seems totally dead-eyed by this point. I watch as the men take her into a house across the street that I've never really looked at before. Totally white, I realize the windows look really dark, like they're boarded up from the inside. Manager comes out asking what the fuck I'm doing, and I tell him what I saw. He basically says it was probably just their retarded sister Anon, go take care of your fucking tables. I do, but I call the anonymous tip line during my break to tell them what I saw. Nothing ever comes of it. I worked at this place for maybe another 2 months. House was still there when I quit. Noticed during that time that different people were always coming and going. It had to be a whorehouse or something. One evening, I'm leaving work, heading to my car parked down the street. Hear someone walking behind me and glance back. Do a double take. It's one of the nicely dressed Asian dudes from before. Nodded politely because I'm a pussy. He just stared me down. Get a bad feeling and keep my eyes on him as I unlock my car door. He walks up to the car sitting behind mine and gets into the driver's seat. I notice there's a guy already sitting inside, in the passenger seat. He's staring at me too. Fuck. Throw open the door, jump into the car and crank the ignition. But the Asian dudes are already pulling up next to me, kinda blocking me in. There was a car in front of me. Both guys are staring me square in the eye. Guy in the passenger seat is casually tapping a gun against the window. Did he died? No, they just drove off slowly after that. I quit my job not long after. Hey, /x/, I have a story for you. I can clearly remember when my grandpa actually told me about this. The memory kinda popped out sometime after he died. Early 40s. Grandpa was about 10 at the time. Small village in southern Sardinia. Poor as fuck, to this day the poorest region in Italy. People used to live in houses made of laundini. Basically a sun-dried mixture of clay mud and hay. Some medieval type shit. Grandpa is playing with some friend in the streets. It's getting late and there's a curfew, time to get home. Grandpa decides to take the long way home, as he was in the mood for a walk. At some point, he hears someone calling his name faintly, almost like a whisper. Freaks him out, so he starts walking faster. He hears it again, this time louder and clearer in the voice of a man without any kind of accent. This is important because us Sardinians have a very strong accent, and if you know about it, it's immediately noticeable. Grandpa also used to have a unique ancient Roman-inspired name his father made up, so there was no mistaking it, yet there was no one in sight. It was also getting darker by the minute. Grandpa is literally shitting his pants at the moment. A strong smoke smell hits his nose, stronger and more pungent than a cigarette. The man calls again, this time followed by a whistle. Right here, Grandpa. Finally, leaning on a short stone wall, Grandpa saw what he described as a distinct-looking man. Clean-shaven, slicked-back hair, smoking from a pipe, wearing leather shoes and a long black coat. He was holding a cane in his left hand and a leather pouch in his right. As I said, at the time people were still pretty much medieval peasants in the region, so that must have looked absurdly out of place. "Come closer," said the man. "No, you're going to kidnap me," Grandpa answered. "Absolutely not. I actually have a present for you," replied the man, as he showed Grandpa the content of the leather pouch. The pouch was allegedly full of gold coins and jewels. Grandpa knows something must be off, yet he's also very tempted. "Come on, I'm gonna make you rich." Grandpa finally gives in and starts walking towards the gold. As he was getting closer, the man started to look off. He said what looked like leather shoes were actually goat-like hooves. What looked like a cashmere coat was actually made from black crow feathers. Also, his face looked like stretched-out leather, and some mixture of black oil and dirty blood was oozing and dripping from his slicked-back hair. His cane also turned into a hissing serpent, crawling in a spiral onto the man's arm. Grandpa was now standing in front of the demonic creature, paralyzed. Its breath smelled like a rotting corpse set ablaze with motor oil. The stench probably worked like ammonia salts, and Grandpa miraculously snapped out of the terror, escaping just a moment before the demon grabbed him by the neck. He made it home running as fast as he can, without ever looking back and praying over his panting breath. Despite all this, Grandpa was still thinking about that gold and didn't sleep that night. Can't blame him, since he found himself eating boiled old leather shoe soles many times. People were that poor, yes. At about 4:30 a.m. he snuck out of the house and came back to the encounter place looking for the bag. What he found was not what he expected though. He said he found a canvas sack full of dirt, worms, shit and some pieces of coal. Up until the day he told me the story, Grandpa remained sure he actually met the devil himself and managed to escape from him. 11. Waiting for bus. My house was out in the country, so my bus stop is way far from my house. All around are woods. Only one road in and out. This is in rural Montana, so that should give you an idea of how remote my house was. The bus even had to make a special route for me. One morning I'm out there earlier than usual because parents are fighting again and I don't wanna deal with that shit. Early November, so it's cold but not freezing. Tourist season is over, so I'm not really looking around for anyone else. Figure I'm alone, so I put my headphones in and jam out to some sweet tunes while I wait. Doing a sick air guitar riff when I notice there's a guy across the street watching me. Oh shit, how long I should been watching Mix. Try to pretend I'm just scratching an itch or something, cause holy fuck, that's really embarrassing. Guy doesn't seem to care, he just keeps staring at me. Stereotypical hiker, has the backpack and boots and everything. Think to myself that it's pretty late in the season for hikers. Start getting a little irritated that the guy is just standing there like I'm some tourist attraction. Turn my back on him and make my music louder. Still feel his eyes on me, eventually turn back around. He's still there, in the same place. I start getting super creeped out. What's this weirdo's deal? Bus should be here any time now, kinda hoping it gets here quick. The guy slowly reaches into his pocket and slowly pulls out a disposable camera. Puts it up to his face. His finger slowly presses the button and he takes a picture of me. I have no fucking idea what to do. But he's not done yet. He slowly turns the camera around and takes a picture of his face. I'm thoroughly shitting bricks now. Absolutely certain I'm about to be serial killered. Then just like that the bus comes. Run up to it and throw myself inside as soon as the doors open. Bus driver is looking at me like I'm an idiot. Tell her there's some weird guy standing around taking pictures of me. Where? She says. Realize the guy is gone. He must have taken off when the bus came. Later that day, the bus drops me off at the same spot. Make sure guy isn't there when I get off, he's gone. The bus leaves and I decide to go look around the area where he was. There's something by the road. Pick it up. It's a fucking disposable camera. Pocket it and get the pictures developed as soon as I save up enough allowance to do it by myself. Didn't tell my parents because I didn't want them to start driving me to school. Stupid, I know. Sneak off one day when my parents are shopping and tell the photo developer guy in the photo department, yeah, I'm old, that I found the camera and don't know what's on it. He says he'll take a look. Next time I can sneak off during shopping, I go to pick up the pictures. Guy gives me a refund. What.jpg. Says there were only 2 pictures on the camera. He's looking at me weird. Gives me the 2 photos. One is very clearly of me, staring at the camera with a worried expression. Looks like it was taken from across the street. Oh shit. I already know what the second photo is. Heart is pounding as I take it out of the envelope. He's staring right into the camera. I remember him not moving, but there's some kind of weird effect going on with his eyes, motion blur or something. Makes it look like his eyes are entirely made of the colored part, with a weird shaped pupil. Scares the absolute shit out of me. Throw both pictures away and nope the fuck back to my parents. Pick kinda related, closest I could come to what his eyes looked like. A friend of my dad's would babysit me sometimes when I was little. Mom wasn't in the picture, and he used to tell a story to me that scares the absolute shit out of me to this day. Dad's friend, I'll call him Bob, is driving a rig out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Oregon. Has to make the delivery by the following morning, so he decides to just drive through the night. It's like 1 in the morning, no one else is out on the roads. Hasn't seen another car in probably 100 miles. He is literally in the middle of nowhere. Suddenly the whole entire sky lights up. Instantly like daylight. Bob fucking slams on the brakes, has no idea what the hell is going on. Everything stays lit up for a good solid 10 seconds, he can see everything. Whatever's happening, it's not lightning, it doesn't stop or flicker at all. Bob hunkers down, anticipating imminent nuclear devastation. Suddenly sky goes dark again. No sound, no blast wave. He sits there in the middle of the road waiting for almost 5 minutes, then decides to keep going. Figures it was a meteor or something. Goes about 2 miles up the road and sees a car with its flashers on stopped in the middle of the road. Stops a good distance away from it. There's not enough room to go around it. Front end of the car is crumpled like it hit something. Bob figures they probably hit a deer that got spooked whenever the meteor went over and ran into the road. He gets out of the cab and goes to see if the driver is okay. Driver is sitting on the ground by the driver's side door. Has his knees up and is resting his head on his arms. Hey buddy, you okay? Bob calls. He stops about 10 feet away for seemingly no reason. Something about the whole situation feels weird. Bob is one of those guys that always listens to his gut, so he stays put. God, my head is killing me, the guy says, but he doesn't lift his head up so it's muffled. Did you hit a deer? Bob asks. He's getting more and more uneasy. Something's wrong. But he still can't figure out what exactly it is. The guy says he thinks he might have hurt his head, asks Bob to please help him. Bob takes a step forward, but his instincts are going apeshit. He looks at everything again. That's when he notices it. The fucking car is all wrong. It looks like what someone thinks a car looks like. It has all the right pieces, but there's nothing extra, if that makes sense. Bob says it looked like a cheap Hot Wheels knockoff. It just looked wonky and wrong. He looks around at the back of the car and realizes that not only is there no license plate, there's not even a trunk. It's just one solid piece of material with taillights put in it. There's no manufacturer or model names. Bob knows cars, and this thing is nothing he's ever seen before. From where he's standing, he can see there's no tailpipe or even hubcaps. It's just the shape of a car. He starts to back up and the guy asks him for help again. Bob tells him he can help him and that he'll call a tow truck when he gets to the next town. The guy lifts his head and looks at Bob. Tells him he thinks he might have a concussion. Something is really wrong with the guy's face, but again it takes a second for Bob to figure it out. The next part is exactly how Bob described it. Everything on the man's face was where it should have been, in their normal positions. He looked totally normal. Except for the fact that his eyes and mouth were on upside down. Bob goes apeshit and sprints back to his rig. Climbs in, locks the door just in time for the man to slam into the door behind him. How the fuck did he get there so fast? He knocks on the glass and smiles at Bob, but because his mouth is upside down it looks like he's screaming. Tells Bob to open the door so he can come in. Bob fucking floors it. Doesn't care if he hits the guy or not. His truck easily pushes the car out of the way. Whatever it is, it's light and it makes no sound when he hits it. Unfortunately, it's an anticlimactic ending. Bob got where he was going fine, with no other problems. My dad knows the story, but I don't think he believes it. But Bob tells it to everyone he meets, so he obviously does. He's absolutely adamant about the guy being an alien. Years later I heard about the Thatcher Effect and nearly had a fucking heart attack when I saw it. I showed one of the pictures to Bob and he wouldn't even look at it. He says it's exactly what the guy looked like. Pic very much related. Not/X, maybe, sad anyway. Went to Disney with this girl I was dating and her mom. This was maybe 2010/11, so I must have been 19 to 20 at the time. We'd been there all day and stopped at this hamburger place for dinner before leaving. Paul lurkers might know the place. Had a Moon Man animatronic or statue or something for a long time at a piano, I think. We're eating and talking about the trip so far when I noticed GF's mom is giving me a weird look. Smiling like she knows something I don't, so I look at her with, "What's going on?" and she leans over and whispers, "I think someone is in love," and glances over my shoulder. There's a girl there sweeping, looks Japanese maybe 5 feet away, just staring at me and moving the broom automatically in the same spot trying to look busy. We kept talking for a while and in that time she moved around a little, never more than 10 feet away, always staring at me with the saddest look on her face and seemingly totally unfazed that I obviously noticed what she was doing. All these years later I never forgot. One of the strangest experiences of my life, and despite it being attention whore bullshit, 99% of the time that experience stuck with me as a measure of what a woman legitimately in fear because of a creepy guy must think, because if that girl could overpower me in some way I have no fucking idea what was going on in her head to make her behave that way, only that she didn't give a fuck about anything but whatever she was thinking. Still feel bad for her to this day though. Best guess I have all these years later, is that I looked like a friend/BF she'd had who died or something and she was struggling with it. At the time though I was positive it was stalker tier shit. Really pretty girl, made no sense she'd get that way over some random guy out of the thousands you see a day working at a Disney park. Hope things worked out for her. Good story. I kinda know what you mean about being on the other side, in a position that women normally find themselves in. I was actually almost raped by this dude. I was out drinking alone one night. I'm 5'11", so technically a manlet, but in good shape. I'm out alone all the time, doesn't bother me. This one fucker came up to me randomly while I was drinking and tried to tell me that we knew each other through a mutual friend, but I didn't remember him at all. But the dude seemed nice and bought me a shot. So we kept chit-chatting. He said he was headed to this bar to meet up with some friends. He implied they were all cute girls and told me he'd buy me some drinks if I wanted to come. I was pretty wasted by this time and he told me he was going to stop off by his place, then convinced me to come up because the parking garage security knows me and they might fuck with you if they see you in my car. So I went up to his place and he kept offering me these drinks he made, but I refused them. He said his friends were actually going to come over, the cute girls, and that I should loosen up because I seemed tense. At this point I kinda realized what I'd gotten myself into, and he kept pressuring me to drink down these drinks, which I kept refusing. Eventually he pulled out his dick and told me to suck it, which I refused, lol. So then he took me back to the bar and I drove home. We went back without saying another word to each other. Like I said, I'm in good shape. But if I had been a naive girl, That dude could have easily overpowered me. He was close to my height and build, and I was pretty drunk. There are some fucked up people out there. Glad you didn't get deliverance, Anon. It unironically happens every day and most people never expect it to happen to them until it's too late. You lucked out big time. Expected any response? My story got to be from a weeb, angry that I passed up a situation any weeb would kill to be in, but the weird Asian stalker girl daydreaming about you shit isn't romantic or fun in reality. You have no idea what other ways somebody blatantly staring you down and following you like that is fucked up in. Like your story shows, you don't even know what somebody capable of acting normal is planning for you. These stories aren't mine, but from a guy I know, a good-looking guy. First, one I was told, as when he was younger, around 15 to 16, 2005 I think, he and his friends were in the center of town, where all the cool things are. I don't really remember this story all too well, it has been a while, but anyway, he was noticing that there was this guy looking at him while they were in a crowd and that he was getting closer. Every so often he would look, he was closer, and after a while, he felt his ass being grabbed, and he knew, he was ready, and socked the fucker, and fucked off. My grandfather was in Vietnam, and he gave an interview once on his town's news about what the experience was like, and there was one particular story he told that really took the tone a different direction. Be Grandpa in Nam. There are stories about a certain person in a very remote village. They call him the Elephant Man. There are rumors about this Elephant Man being used to torture and kill American soldiers for intel and shit. But the way he did it was what made the Americans shiver. He apparently had a large and really terribly malformed appendage on his body, not an arm, not a leg, just some hematoma he could move around. He would allegedly shove it down the throats of American prisoners and torture them by strangling them from the inside. Sounded like some X-Files shit. One day there was a guy who actually managed to escape from the village. Had been running for 2 days, totally malnourished, totally frazzled, but when his senses were gathered, the Elephant Man was the first thing he spoke about. He was a prisoner, about to be shot at a moment's notice. The Viet Cong brought in a man with a sheet over his torso, and said to him, "You will tell us your plans of battle, or he will kill you." The Elephant Man removed the sheet and there it was. A big terrible arm, jutting from his torso, like it was surgically planted there. They tried to extract his info, but he wouldn't budge. Then the Elephant Man stepped in. Without warning, he jammed the horrible thing into the poor man's mouth, and it forced its way down his throat. The smell and taste were almost indescribably awful, like the combined ass sweat of 100 hairy Greek carpenters. He was relieved of his torture temporarily after that, and managed to escape into the woods due to a faulty knot holding his hands behind him. The guys at the outpost are spooked. A couple days after the prisoner returns. Get fucking ambushed by Viet Cong and taken prisoner. Knocked out by an explosion, wake up in a tent somewhere. There are 3 men before Gramps, all of them are bound with rope. We're about to be tortured. The Viet Cong enter, and they're angry. The Elephant Man is with them, as evident by the sheet covering something large protruding from his torso. Oh God, please. Now, Grandpa was skeptical about the stories of the Elephant Man, and he was a seeing is believing kinda guy. He was about to believe more than he thought he ever would. One of the Vietnamese approaches the guy farthest from my grandpa. Asks, "Do you love your country, American?" Replies yes. Viet looks at the Elephant Man. He's already walking over to the poor soldier. The Elephant Man looms over the soldier for a second, as if to size him up. He smiles like a torturer would, and rips the sheet from his body. My grandpa saw what everyone else believed. This is when the news interview got dark. I'll say what Gramps said on the TV. And so the Elephant Man stood there, and I saw. I could live to be 80, I swear to God I'll remember this until I die. He stood there, and protruding from his torso was a 23-inch long dick. This frickin' thing was massive. Why, this guy's dick must have been at least 10, 12 inches in girth, maybe even more. And I swear to God, he was soft, soft I tell ya. He was a grower and a shower. And it was at that moment that I realized he was named the Elephant Man cause he could fuck an elephant with that thing, certainly if it was hard. Oh, the guy must have had a second heart between his balls. It was one of the most disturbing things I have ever seen. The Elephant Man began his torture, shoving his gigantomorph elephant schlong into the American's mouth. The poor man could but allow death to release him from his body, and the gator tail in his throat was so wide that it pressed against his jugular and stopped blood flowing to his brain, killing him. Just as the man was finished with the first soldier, pulling the telephone pole from the esophagus, whose exit was marked by a sickening vacuum sound, explosions erupted in the village. It was American forces, arrived to rescue the prisoners and then burn the village down and everyone in it. The exit was swift, and my grandpa and the other soldier were taken away by helicopter to a medical tent on a nearby base. He still thinks about it to this day. The horse-dick sadist, though dead in body, alive as a lingering mimetic danger, a phantom pain, still torturing Americans after all this time. I never asked Grandpa about any war stories after that. When I was 9 years old in 1999, I ran away from home. My father was a machinist and worked late nights, and my mother was my teacher. I was homeschooled and only knew these two people. My father was an abusive alcoholic and used to beat me, but never laid a hand on my mother. We lived in an underdeveloped business area in rural Alaska, miles from suburbia. It wasn't uncommon for business to start and tank within the same year, so when I left I found an abandoned building and decided to make my home there. I found a small broken window that led to the basement of a 4-story building and I broke in. There were signs that other people had come into this building before me, and me not really knowing how to talk to people had me very frightened. I explored for hours. The 3rd and 4th floor were in bad condition. There were holes in the walls, as if someone had come in and just smashed them. Broken chairs, tables, cabinets, all sorts of things. I found a room with a push lock on the door and decided to make my camp there. This was during a period where we only had sun for about 6 hours a day, so without natural light this building was pitch dark, and beyond freezing. In what I imagine was the middle of the night when I had dozed off, I heard glasses shattering and the sound of a man screaming as if he was writhing in pain. It sounded as if he was breaking everything he could get his hands on. His voice seemed to split where he was screaming and wheezing as if it were two people. This terrified me. Even though I had the door locked and was on a different floor, I still worried for my safety. I flicked my lighter on and burned some manila folders to look around the room. I found a hole in the wall that was just big enough for me to fit in, so I dove in and crawled as far back as I could go. The man screamed for hours and wheezed. It sounded like he was being tortured, but he was the only one there. Eventually the screaming stopped. I heard his footsteps echo in the staircase between rooms. He made it to the floor I was on and it sounded as if he were dragging something behind him. He went into a different room and shattered some glass. He kept doing this for a while but never made a sound himself. I pissed myself in the wall, now terrified he'd punch through the wall of the next room and discover me. Eventually it was silent. For too long. I never heard him leave, and although I was tired I feared falling asleep, for if I snored he might discover me, and what would he do? After some quiet hours the doorknob to the room I was in shook. It shook a few more times, and then I heard a rattle. He took a key, placed it in the door and unlocked it. He stepped in and stayed silent for a few minutes. He left the room walking. Then he started running around in other rooms, and dragged something into the room adjacent to mine. Through the wall I could only hear a cracking sound. Then he started to chew very loudly and exclaim what he was eating was delicious. I didn't make a sound. I hadn't found any food in that building during my exploration, so he must have brought something in. "Would you like some?" he said in a hushed tone. I didn't respond. I imagined he was talking to himself. Ever get the feeling you're being watched? He laughed to himself. I just know someone is here, haha, he rattled on while chewing and making that horrible cracking sound. I'd really like a dinner guest sometime. I had a lump in my throat I could not swallow. I had to clear it so bad, but I feared what this guy would do if I did, so I stayed quiet. I was so utterly terrified and cold from all of the windows being smashed and being wet from my piss, I almost cried. I'm going to give you till the count of 5. I didn't dare move. 1. I closed my eyes so tightly. 2. He couldn't have known I was in here. 3. I didn't know about God at the time, but I believe I prayed to some sort of higher being. 4. I swallowed hard and took a deep breath. 5. And he went silent. There were no noises for a long time. It may have been an hour, but I am not sure. I nodded off from pure exhaustion, and when I woke up it was still pitch black. I startled to scuffle a little bit, totally forgetting where I was, and I froze when I realized. I didn't hear anything, so I waited for another few minutes, then left the wall. I exited the small hole and walked out of the room. The upstairs area was littered with drywall, glass, cigarette butts, alcohol cans, and debris. I couldn't remember where the stairwell was to leave, so I had to explore all over again. I eventually ended up in the room where the man spent the majority of his time, and that's when it all clicked. The room was covered in shit and blood. A deer carcass had been ripped apart in the room, and its intestines draped all over it. They hung through ceiling tiles and over desks like a canopy. I only realized when I smacked my face into a piece of its organ strewn across the walls. Remember, it was pitch black. I lit some more folders on fire and looked across the room. The skull had teeth marks punctured into it, and the eyes and teeth had been thrown around the room. I didn't know what to make of any of this, so I broke down crying. I left the building and continued onward towards my home. When I arrived, my mother yelled at me for being gone for 3 days. She quickly stopped when she saw I was covered in blood. When I explained the story, my father sat down with me and explained that this is why he keeps us away from other people, because this is what they do. I was terrified of people and lived with my parents and did not speak to any other people besides the 2 of them until I was 20 years old in 2000, and moved out when my mother died, and my father told me I was never really his son. I've lived a very strange life. I am 27 now and live on my own in Alaska.
Fucking Wendigos, man. And I can't grasp how your family was the only human one in the entire place. It seems odd.
That sent a shiver up my fucking spine reading that. My mother's cousin, a Native American, not her real cousin but a neighbor she grew up with, came to our house once to fix up our bathroom, and when I told him the story he told me it was of the Windwalker. We didn't have internet, or even books on the subject, so when I studied up on it later it made a lot of sense. I have spoken to many Native Americans about this very story and they all tell me I'm lucky to be alive. Pissing myself was the best thing I could do for myself because it has a hormone in it that wards off evil spirits. One guy told me the opposite though, saying that me pissing myself is how he was alerted to my presence.
What's at that building now? We're the same age and have some similarities. Did ever you consider going back and taking him up on his dinner invitation?
The reason I bring the story up at all is because my father died sometime a week ago while on vacation from work. He must have been dead for 4 days before someone found him. I'm supposed to go back up to claim the house, but I was thinking of revisiting the building, as crazy as it sounds. If it still stands, I may kill myself on the top floor. I'm a very unhappy individual, and although I hate my father, he was my reason to live. I have only lived this long to see him die. Be me, high school student. Listening to boring history discussion. Feeling an urge to ditch class. Excuse myself to the professor cause I need to take some rest at the infirmary. Professor agrees, probably too tired to care. Go downstairs, 4th floor. Feeling an urge to pee, I walk to the corridor leading to the restroom. Our corridor is huge, its height is probably 3 times my size. I went in one of the 3 cubicles and took a piss. Feels good. JPG. Suddenly I start to hear murmur. Can't understand due to shitty accent, but I think it was Spectre Suprate. Felt chill down my spine, now observing my surroundings. I hesitantly checked the other cubicles. No one is inside. No one is in the restroom except me. Murmur now returns to what seemed like a chant. Spectre Suprate, Spectre Suprate, Spectre Suprate. Check behind me, nothing was there. Can't make it out where that fucking noise is coming from. Nope, the fuck out. About to return to classroom, pale as fuck. Professor sees me as he exits the room. Asks me what was going on. Tell him I keep hearing something, but can't find the source of the noise in the restroom. He stopped for a second, then asks me what was the noise I heard. Spectre Suprate. Became pale, suddenly walks out to meet the principal. I asked him what was wrong, wouldn't tell me. The following day, the school invited a priest to bless the school, focused on the bathroom I took a piss. Principal talks to me, told me to forget what happened and to not tell anyone about it. Now I graduated high school, returned to my alma mater. I noticed that the restroom was renovated and turned into a faculty staff room. Remembered that day. Went and checked my old history professor, the douchebag who wouldn't tell me anything that day. I asked what the fuck happened back then. Professor told me to talk about this outside the room, cause it seems the principal told everyone to keep their mouths shut about this, but it was my right to know. There was actually a story that a girl was raped in the men's restroom stalls decades ago. The culprits were never captured. The girl committed suicide days later in the same restroom by hanging herself. The school tried to forget the incident that took place. Then I remembered what made my prof shudder all of a sudden. What about the noise I kept hearing that day? You mean Spectre Suprate? Yeah. You really want to know? I nodded. It's Latin for look above you. My face went. OK/X/ I've been wanting to tell you this for a while. For some background, I work in a petrol station located on the highway. Mostly night shifts, 3 p.m. to midnight, so I'm used to the weird, the creepy and the downright paranormal. But this normal shift, people coming and going. It's about 7, things are dark and store is slowing down a bit. Behind console area. Look to my left and lock eyes, not that I could, mind you, with a woman. Frail, thin, elderly, with wrinkled skin and giant fly-eyed sunglasses on, that cover half her face. Immediately get the jitters from her. She walks slowly to the door, I had to manually open it to let her in, as the auto doors didn't pick her up. Makes her way to the console. Stares at me, can tell, still wearing those creepy sunnies. Can you come outside and take a look at my car, I think something's wrong. Voice is soft in volume but deep and resonating, like I felt it more than I heard it. Decline, explain policy with leaving as only staff on site. Okay then. She walks off to the toilet. Now here is where alarms bells starting going off. Serving other customers, stragglers here and there. She comes out of the bathroom after 5 minutes, walks over to me again. There's no toilet paper, could you come get me some? Alarm bells, something in my head says not to go out there. Get some staff toilet paper from behind console. Here you go, ma'am. Her demeanor is sour, or as far as I can tell with those fucking sunnies. Okay. She walks back into the toilet. About another 5 minutes she walks back out, and wanders around the shop. I watch her and notice she flicks her head in my direction every now and then, like scanning me. She walks to coffee machine, then calls out to me. Her voice is louder this time, but it feels more like a knife this time, shrill and freezing. There's no milk in here, can you replace it? I'd like a coffee. I know I should do it, but fuck something is fucking up. Alarm in my body and brain was screaming not to. Decline and say I can't leave the console at this hour of the night. She gets visibly annoyed, saying how shitty my customer service is. She threatens to contact my manager if I don't come out and change the milk. Decline and apologize, even offer manager's number. She tries 3 more times to get me out over the next 20 minutes. Finally gives up and walks off, glaring at me through the windows as she rounds the shop out of sight. Rest of shift goes by without a hitch. No creepy things, surprisingly mellow and normal shift. Still have sense of dread in my stomach. Swap over and leave at 12:30 a.m., walking to my car about 50 meters in the parking lot. As I get closer, the fucking glasses, scarf and gloves she was wearing around folded neatly, the glasses resting on top, in a pile on the ground by my driver's side door. Look around, sense of dread intensifying. Quick as a flash I unlock my car, jump in and lock it again. No time to relax, start car, and gun it out of there. Never been so fearful in my life. That sense of dread never left. I got home and needed a few drinks before I could loosen up enough to even consider sleep. Be me. Working at this old-ass hotel in Pig-related. Be a small city west of Chicago. Hotel is supposedly haunted. Everyone on staff has a paranormal story to tell. Be working night audit as usual. Doing my regular thing, check in a few guests. Sit around on the internet. Be about 2 a.m. Phone rings. Phone tells what room is calling or if it's an outside line. Not an outside line but the room shows as one that's vacant that night. What the fuck? JPG. Answer. Front desk motherfucker, what you need? No one is there. Hang up phone. Double check to see that room is really vacant. Vacant. Nope. JPG. A little creeped out but chalk it up to whatever and continue sitting around doing laundry and shit. Be 30 minutes later. Phone rings again. Same fucking room. Let it ring, no one's in that room anyway. It won't stop ringing. Pick up the phone. Front desk ass bag, what the fuck? No one, just static. Static starts getting louder. Fuck. Hang up phone. Chills all over my body. Really freaked out now, think I'm losing it. Check again to make sure that room is vacant. Vacant. Just stare at the word vacant on the computer screen. Man, fuck this shit. Go out for a smoke. Come down. Come back in, finish laundry. Get busy doing the night audit. Be about 3:30 a.m. at this point. Be fucking tired, always be tired at this job. Lay down on the couch in the lobby and Pig-related. Uneasy, but like the terrible employee I was, I drift off to sleep. Almost immediately start dreaming. Dream that I'm in the hotel kitchen, which can be entered through a series of winding pathways from the lobby. Kitchen always gives me a sense of dread. Always had to go in there to prepare the breakfast and always hated it. Still sleeping, dreaming I'm in the entryway between the kitchen and a maintenance room. Dream that I begin to float upward toward the ceiling. Try to stop myself but I can't. Wake up. Holy shit. JPG. That was super realistic. Look around. I'm not in the lobby on the couch. I'm laying on the floor in the kitchen right near the entrance. Get up, look around. Nope. Turn and make a beeline for the lobby. Behind me, all at once, all of the pots and pans in the kitchen crash down. I run. Back in lobby, music on the speakers. Fuck. That feel when I have to work here every night. That feel when I have to go back into the kitchen to make the breakfast in 15 minutes. That feel when I have to clean up after a ghost. I quit that job and moved out of that town shortly after this happened. Here's another one. Hotel lobby was decorated with all sorts of antiques, including an antique organ. It looked a lot like Pig-related but without the top portion. Organ was always closed because it was pretty fragile and we didn't want anyone trying to play it. Be me. Be working at same hotel. About 3 a.m. again. Sitting there doing my thing. Music playing softly. Out of nowhere I hear a chord played on the organ. Organ is out of sight from the front desk. What the fuck? JPG. Another chord plays. I get up, chills. Walk around the corner. Organ is closed, like it always is. Turn around to go back to the front desk. Hear a god-awful scratching, like nails across a blackboard, rip across the wallpaper behind me. Turn around. Nothing. That feel when it's time for another cigarette. Seriously, fuck that place. Some background info. I live right by a bike trail that cuts into a dense forest that goes on and on for miles. The trail is actually laid upon old railroad tracks, and along the way there are still old pre-1900s buildings lost in the dense forest that still remains unexplored. When I was a kid I was always deathly afraid to go out into these woods for some reason. Well, what I encountered today has rekindled that fear. This afternoon at about 1 I really felt like riding my bike. The weather is so nice now and I love being alone out in the woods away from everyone, so it was perfect. I pack up a notebook, a pen, always on hand in case of inspiration, and a big bottle of water and head off into the woods. The opening is so tiny against the vast dense forest you have to know exactly where it is to find it. It always seems spooky and mystical, because it's just this black almost doorway looking void amidst this mountain of trees and underbrush. I speed down the hill as usual and in a couple of seconds reach the crossroads. One goes forward into the thickest parts of the forest, the left goes towards the city and highway, and the right goes out into the open endless fields and farmland with the big patches of forest spread throughout. I sat there for a little bit, took a swig of water and head right. I haven't been out very far past the fields before, and I have a day to kill, so I keep going and going and going. Past the open fields and the huge pastures, past the familiar broken-down railroad checkpoint or whatever it is, past the one single house that lies just outside the trail, past the huge rusting metal bridge. So I'm going and going and going, and eventually I see a beware sign nailed to a tree, then another, then a couple all together nailed to an old busted phone line, and finally a huge wooden barricade that says stay out. Pick related, except imagine thicker and the trail like 20 feet higher than the tree bases. The thing was already pushed partially out of the way, like someone had been in before me, and being the rebel that I am, I just had to see what was back there, something I soon came to regret. So I am riding again and the forest is far thicker than before, and on each side of the trail, about 4 inches out it drops right off, steep as fuck and deadly, that's for sure. At this point I'm a bit uneasy as it is completely silent, not a fucking sound. I mean, this is deep, thick forest, why am I not hearing any animals? Immediately after this realization I come upon an opening finally. Down below it's now swampy and dark, the trees are far and few between and rise out of these deep dark pools of water. I'm creeped out at this point, it's eerie as fuck out here, I'm totally alone and I'm getting tired. I start crossing this very sketchy old wooden bridge and then hear this deep low grumble and immediately pause. Nothing but eerie empty silence, not a fucking sound all around me. I then carefully start again and realize it's just my tire, the fucking thing has gone flat. I have no idea how I didn't realize this earlier at any point in my trip, I mean it was totally and utterly dead. Then I hear this dreadful fucking blood-curdling scream tear through silence. I'm fucking teary-eyed and have goosebumps as I tell this. I am frozen, I have no idea what it was, no idea where it was, and of all fucking times my tire is fucking flat as a 9-year-old Chinese boy. A stick breaks, and I immediately whip my bike around and started pedaling my fucking ass off. All of a sudden I start hearing shit crashing in the woods and I don't dare fucking look out there. I am swerving all over this shitty trail because it is covered in pebbles, holes, cracks, broken branches and all kinds of other shit that can all totally kill me at this speed. And somehow before I didn't see these clumps of white stringy fur all caught on the trees and along the trail. The sounds of something racing through this dense thick brush are so loud, I can hear it over my horrendously obnoxious flat tire squishing and squashing on the ground as I am almost spinning the chain off the gear. At this point a million things are racing through my mind, My legs are absolutely burning from riding so far out into the woods and now blazing back on this goddamn tire. Fuck. I swerved right on the edge of the trail and the sandy pebbly shit went flying out into the trees, jumped over a huge pothole and heard another loud ass scream. That didn't even faze me at this point. I am just pounding my legs, breathing so hard my chest hurts and waiting for my tire to explode at any moment and to finally get eaten by whatever the fuck is chasing me. I just missed the barricade, literally centimeters from crashing headfirst into the thing. Finally I see a light off in the distance. I'm close to getting back on the fields and back towards home. I'm filled with a new wind of energy and kick it in hyperdrive now. The sounds of crashing are now getting softer, slower, then stop. I fucking made it. I finally made it. I zoom right out into the sunlight. I've never been happier in my fucking life to feel the sun in my eyes. At that moment I just stop. The fatigue just immediately hits me like a wave. I'm dead fucking tired and couldn't move another inch. I turned my head around to look back at whatever the fuck was there, and in the darkness I see two red burning eyes just staring right at me. I felt my entire body go cold. Then in a flash they were gone. I rode back fast as I could but eventually slowed down and crawled my way all the way back. I downed what little bit of water I had left, and even though it was hot I wasn't sweating one drop. I was literally frozen from that stare. Did I see a fucking Goatman /X/? Tomorrow I'm getting a gun license and buying a shotgun and never going out into those woods again. Fuck, I'm even considering moving into a city away from any wooded areas now. Volunteer at tourist railroad. Sitting in front coach. Myself and others are in penguin suits. Doing some papers, passing the word. Look down long corridor of coaches and see a person derping around in another coach. Don't think much of it. End of the day, so he could have been cleaning. Make final call on radio before closing barn door, everyone reports back. Look down coach, see the man cleaning again. Yell, hey, we're closing up. Got a key? No response. I walk down to see who it is. Keep in mind it's very dark in our car barn. Nobody in the coach. Begin to walk back, hear a crash. I turn and see the door unclamped and closed itself behind me. Something that can't be done without a brute amount of strength. Leave with a weird feeling for next few hours. 2 weeks later. Santa made his visit to the railroad. As we're heading back into the same car barn, I hear the door closing again. At this point I assume it's just something loose that keeps doing it, but I checked anyway. Train stops, completely dark again, and I hear the carpet start to get that compressing noise when something walks on it. I GTFO and start walking from the back of the barn to the front. Loud bang again. Only this time it was a tad bit louder and sounded like metal on metal. I make it to the front and don't bother saying a word. 6 weeks later. Valentine's dinner train. Sold out crowd, lots of food in that car. Night runs smooth, we return around 11 p.m. While talking to catering group, they say 2 light bulbs died and their food went really cold even though everything was torch heated. I say okay and I'll write it up. 1 week later. While putting in the new bulbs, I hear a very distinct sound. A ticket puncher, much like mine, clipping away. The coach is gutted and no need to punch tickets. I turn around and see the typical nothing and go back to work. As I'm cleaning the carpets, I hear the sound of a whistle outside of the car. I'm ignoring this shit like the plague, trying to get out of there. On my way out, door closes behind me and I hear the whistling noise again. Have never worked that car since then. A little background on the car. It was built in the 1920s as a passenger coach and served most of its life in towns you never hear about. It was involved in a train wreck but repaired some years later. My friend has also told me about strange shit happening around that car. Creeps me out all the time. Pick related, it's the interior. I can go on with more creepy shit from around the general area of the railroad. Here's a story another volunteer told me about. 2006 to 2007-ish. Early spring and the train heads to our picnic grove. As the train approaches the road crossing about 1/2 mile before the grove, a car is seen fouling the tracks laying in the way. Crew gets off engine, investigates, and has the vehicle towed in 45 minutes. Upon arrival into Grove, crew notices something very strange. A man hung himself from a tree limb above the tracks. They panic, GTFO from there, and call the police. 2008. Train begins to cross bridge outside of the Grove and notices the gate is open. Engine crew slam on train brakes, only to discover the remains of a person scattered across a picnic table. He pulled the Kurt Cobain. 2009. Train begins pulling into picnic grounds but doesn't stop because it wasn't a scheduled stop. Train crew notices a man, very alive, sitting on a log as the train passes. Coming back 2 hours later, emergency brake is applied. Apparently the brakeman discovered his body hanging over the log. He OD'd. 2011. Wild West train preparations are made, cleaning is underway. Crew takes car down to Grove and discovers shocker another body. This one blew his head off too. Cleanup is underway, and everything runs smooth as usual. This is where the /x/type shit comes in. 2012. It's late, in with a friend at the Grove, typical shit. Notice a lantern light down the tracks. Seems out of place, but a train was running that night. More than 2-4 hours go past. Lantern doesn't move. Hear a very loud bang come from lantern area. We walk down to find nothing. We decided to call quits and walk back to the car. As we walk, another loud bang and a scream of sorts echoes off the hill. We run back to the car and get the hell out of there. Train crew said nothing was there on the way back. 2014. I ride a plow train up the line to the Grove. As we pull in, I notice footprints in the snow. I tell my engineer and fireman I'm gonna check. I walk the train of steps to the creek side. Creek is partially frozen and pretty deep with a waterfall on it. You would have to swim to go anywhere. Not very possible in a frozen creek and temps. Around 10 degrees. Report back, engineer and other crew join me to search the area. Nothing. As we're heading back, we notice a large hole in the ice downstream. As if something fell through. We stop, look from the bridge, and keep going. 7 hours later. Here comes the dinner train. Sold out crowd and plenty of food. We reach the Grove to eat. About an hour after dinner, a passenger asks me about the area we're in and when the trains run here. I take out my lantern and point at a few tables and explain. I shit you not. Someone was sitting at the table I shined at. Clear as day. I get fellow trainmen, we call out and ask if they're okay. He says yes and that he's just passing by. 9:30 p.m. and cold as shit with 3 feet of snow on the ground. Train leaves, we are still mindfucked at this dude sitting here. Next day. Text message from friend. We went to the Grove to do some track work. The table by the creek was cleared off and had footprints going to it, but not away. I'm skeptical at this point. Asked did he walk back on his own track? Nope. Clearly just one way. I said okay and stayed clear of telling him the story. 5 weeks ago. Ride train up as a car host. Arrive at Grove and discover a man sitting at the table. He waves and I ask him how he is, where he came from, etc. Tells me I'm just passing through. Vietnamish flashbacks engaged. I baited the fuck out and stay put by the other car hosts. I'm still scared to go there till this day. I stay where the real people are now. Pick related. That's the Grove the day before the footprints were found. I can keep going with a few more. 2013. With 2 best friends, cruising down back roads that follow the said railroad in above stories. As we're heading down one of the roads, friend number 1 tells me about an area we call Dailywood and a story associated with it. Paperwork shows a brakeman working on some rail cars was crushed by accident when a passing train coupled into the car. He died in that general area. Friend 1 and 2 tell me this fucked story about how they'd go out with a flare and throw it at the passing by train full of volunteers to fuck with them. Friend 1 said they did it until they actually realized the story wasn't 100% fake. 2010. Friend 2 decides to fuck with Friend 1 during an operation. Friend 2 parks on a dirt back road in a town of 30 or so. He hikes back a mile to the spot featured in these stories and has his lantern and torch ready. Friend 2 then finds his buddy, who was in on it too. As Friend 2 and buddy throw torch at Friend 1's train and shine lanterns in, they realize something odd. In the quarry sighting that the man died, an actual light was shining through the trees. They walk back to it expecting another volunteer who wasn't fucking stupid to the story. They find nothing, and the light disappears. Friend 1, 2, and buddy never fuck around back there after that. 2014. I'm on a night dinner train bound for an eatery along the line. We go past the area of interest and I take my curious look out the window as usual. There it is. In between two pine trees and some broken rock from the 1800s was a small light. No bigger than a lantern. I've already seen some freaky shit around the railroad, but this was cool to finally see, and it was confirmed as legit. Friend 1 and 2 were with me and buddy was in jail for fucking his sister. Upon returning, we don't see anything, but there is that weird feeling you get sometimes. Ever since then, we periodically see the light in the woods. We discovered there's nothing back there. We figured it had something to do with the rock wall back there because some S has a light that shines up it, but this light is very misplaced and strange looking. Like it shouldn't belong. I like to tell passengers the story of what happened to get a few oohs and ahs, but the volunteer corporation are the only ones that truly know about it and that it isn't a joke. Since we're at it, here's one smaller story. Wintertime and creepy-ass car barn. We have a steam locomotive. The locomotive was undergoing inspection and couldn't have any steam pressure on it whatsoever. Midwinter 2013. Mo goes in to check on engine, do general maintenance, and clean. Fellow named Andy notices the locomotive was a tad bit warm. Know how you can see when a surface is hot and the air around it fluctuates? Andy gets in cab of locomotive, only to find the firebox was empty, no water was in the engine, and it was about 35 degrees in the barn that day. No one knows why or how it started to fire itself up. This isn't the first time it has happened. The locomotive is 105 years old and has had a number of historically significant incidents happen, including hitting a bus full of kids, derailing a full train, have multiple deaths in the cab, and so on so forth. And for the simple folk, steam engines can't heat up without water, coal, or anything else inside of it. It should be a cold block of iron and steel. Pick related. It's the creepy-ass engine in the area of the light. No skinwalkers, ghosts or monsters. I got you OP. Be me. In the woods. Copper smell in the air. And something like blood and guts that's been sitting out on the highway for 2 years with shit piled on top. Probably just a dead moose, so I make my camp when I notice the ghost of my dead grandpa. Probably just sleep paralysis, I'm wide awake. Grandpa says, I wouldn't worry about it. Chill crawls up my spine. Feels like a disembodied hand tickling the ivories of my vertebrae. Realize Grandpa is in league with the skinwalker. Reach for my Remington 870, ready to blow a hole through the old fucker's ghost when a sound in the bushes captures my attention. No smell of copper and shit anymore, this is some straight up funky musk. Grandpa looks spooked. Says, I've smelled that smell before. Backstory, Grandpa was actually killed in a Sasquatch territorial dispute. He got in the way and was torn limb from limb by the foul beasts. So when he says he recognizes the smell, it sends a chill up my spine. We begin to hear knocking on the trees. It's all around us. A chill rolls up my spine as I realize we're surrounded. Reach for my Winchester 1897. If I die fighting. Prepare myself. Any second now those fuckers will be charging at me from the trees. Suddenly wake up lying on the highway. Head is pounding. Look around. My truck is parked nearby, but all my camping equipment is missing, except for my AK-47, M4 carbine, and Smith & Wesson 686. Check my phone. Dead. Truck won't start. Pounding headache has me passing out in the driver's seat. When I come to, the truck works fine, and I drive home. Find a chip embedded in my pineal gland when I return. Still wonder what it was. Are you literally me? In the woods with my FAL in full battle rattle for a relaxing weekend. Say I sure do enjoy the woods. Here I sure do enjoy the woods in my grandfather's voice. Grandfather disappeared shortly after camping in this exact spot a year to the day before this camping trip. He smelled like copper and blood and his skin never sat on him right in the days before he disappeared. Also he ate neighborhood dogs and stuff, so people were suspicious. Decide to set up camp after hearing the voice for some reason. See what looks like my friend who disappeared 2 weeks prior while we were camping in the same spot by the tree line. Immediately start shooting because my friend never stood near the tree line like that. Threw plasma grenade a Space Marine friend gave me. Direct hit. Raw. Explosion, hear screeching. Go to confirm the kill. My face when I find 3 aliens and their flying saucer next to the corpse of a Sasquatch. I am of course a forensic specialist and noticed they had all been dead for 6 months and 3 days. No plasma burns on the surrounding trees. Turn around because of fight or flight feeling I suddenly get. Ghost of my grandpa. He says there will be a fake pandemic in a year. This was a year before Kung Flu started, and the Jews will use it to poison the Goyim and justify totalitarianism. How did he know? Get on motorcycle with my tent, didn't even pack it up, just threw it on my back because sheer terror. It doesn't start. Cop pulls up next to me, which is weird because no road for miles. Says there have been mysterious disappearances and he will take me home. Get home, turn to think cop. Cop isn't there. Only a deer with a makeshift harness made of rope from my camping kit. Don't even remember learning how to ride deer. Wake up next day. Calendar telling me about camping trip. My face when it was the day I planned the trip for. My face when time travel. Went camping and it all happened again. This is day 520 of this cycle. My life is a living hell.